Welcome to Home Business TV. Greetings and welcome to the Home Business Podcast. I'm Richard Medicine, your host. On the Home Business Podcast, we love entrepreneur success stories. Today's guest, James Rosseau, hits that target. James Rosseau is a hip-hop media owner, CEO, and author of the new book, Success on Your Own Terms: 6 Promises to Fire Up Your Passion, Ignite Your Career, and Create an Amazing Life. James shares an inspiring blend of personal setbacks and triumphs, smart strategies, and lessons learned on his way from a North Philadelphia neighborhood to a Fortune 100 boardroom. So, greetings, James Rosseau. Welcome to the Home Business Podcast. Please say hello.
Thank you, Richard. Hello, and thank you so much for having me.
Cool. You're connecting in from Delaware today?
Connecting in from Wilmington, Delaware, just outside
How's
of Philadelphia.
everything out in Delaware?
It's good. Weather is great. I hope it's good there in Minnesota.
Yeah, that's this time of year. Weather's good everywhere, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyway, thanks for connecting in, and we look forward to learning more about you. First, let's jump right into achieving success on your own terms. First, let's learn a little more about you. Tell us a little bit about being a Christian hip-hop media owner.
Well, it's exciting. I think for most people, when they hear Christian hip-hop, they usually go, didn't know such a thing existed. And then maybe sometimes the second question is, isn't that an oxymoron? And I say, have to step back and go, absolutely not, right? Hip-hop in and of itself is a musical form, also defined as a culture. And within that, you have a lot of different messages. And so the message of Christianity is one of them. It's a growing genre, has been for
well, that's what I've noticed, is that it's become from an obscure niche to an actual dominant sector.
Yeah, it's and it's a subgenre of a subgenre. Many people say it's a subgenre of gospel music, which in of itself is a genre, but we've been able to launch our channel on SiriusXM and get several million listeners. So we're excited about the growth of the genre, and it's exciting.
Well, cool. What kind of perspectives did you gain from being on a Fortune 100 boardroom?
At the time I was an executive. Well, actually, I've been in 2, right? So JP Morgan Chase's and then Allstate. I think one that we still are fighting for diversity, right? To have diversity of thought, diversity of people in the room, diversity of experiences. So that's one. I think 2 was that it's possible. I think depending on where you start from, you may not believe it is possible. And so that was a big takeaway for me. And also another reason, I think I amassed a lot of mentees and wrote the book.
Yeah, the Fortune 100, they actually did some studies that increasing the diversity of boards actually improved performance. I mean, we knew that from the military and the Navy. You always brought in, all kinds of diversity on any kind of decision you made, because you'd make better decisions that way. And I think it's borne out also when they study boardrooms.
But I think when they study most things, data shows that heterogeneous teams outperform homogeneous teams.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it. Yeah. And
absolutely.
So anyway, that's an interesting angle. James, what was the inspiration behind authoring your book, Success on Your Own Terms? So like when a book, did you think about it for a while and write notes to yourself on a daily basis, one day kind of put it all together, or did you just clear the decks and start and say, hey, I'm going to write a book, and just block it out till you had it finished?
Neither. I was literally just mentoring people, Richard, trying to take notes as the mentees list grew. I wanted to say, well, let me make sure I'm being consistent. And so next thing I know, I've got notes in a Word document that's 30, 40 pages plus long. And then conversations with a friend, a book coach, and then a agent. All of them convinced me that it was a book. And I said no all along the way. No, it's not a book. It's just a bunch of random notes I put together. And I said, no, it's a book. And so finally the agent said, well, let me pitch it. And he pitched it to a few printing houses, and I got a publishing deal, right? And so here we are.
Yeah, I tell you, getting a publishing deal today like that's that's impressive. James, in your own life, you found that adhering to the 6 promises you talk about in your book help to propel your success. First, embrace your passion. Talk to us a little bit about how we can do that.
Absolutely. And the first thing I would say, it's the most important of the 6 promises. I probably spend, 20% of the book really focusing on passion and purpose. And You do that by dialing back and thinking about your natural gifts and talents. That's the first place you can start. When you walk into a room, you talk to people who are adults and ask them about, what it is that truly lights them up. I'll give you two questions as a give me. One is, what would you do if you weren't paid for it and you can just do it? Second is, you get, an unforeseen, forsaken amount of money that's put in your hand, right? Riches beyond comparison. You buy your parents the home you want. You give your cousins some money. You take all the trips. You amass all the assets, cars and stuff. What are you doing with your time? And in both cases, people usually have a great answer, and they smile wickedly and they say, fill in the blank, right? And you ask them the question, well, why aren't you doing that today? If that's the thing that lights you up. And those are the questions you can ask yourself, because somewhere along our road, when we're younger, we play, we do different things, we decide we want to be something, and then someone meaningly who wants to give us great insight says, hey, you've got to make a living. And so you move away from that thing, right? And you start to believe they're mutually exclusive. But the fact is, they don't have to be mutually
I want to be
exclusive.
a race car driver, but it's probably they're not lined up to pay me to do that.
It could be late now, Richard, but you never know until you actually try it. Talk to some people who do it. Spend some time understanding what the path looks like to grow in it. And even if you're doing it, I always say sometime, part-time, anytime, spend time in it, because it's the thing that lights you up. It's the thing that gives you energy. It's the thing that refuels your reserves.
Yeah, I got into flying a little bit, and that kind of I think if I could have been like an airline pilot,
Nice.
that'd be something to ignite the passion. Now I'm just trying to not wrap myself around a tree when I get out there. But your second promise kind of jumped out at me, which is perform with progress versus perfection. Is this because perfection can end up being the enemy of good enough?
Yeah, you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. And it also, the pursuit of perfection can also just make you stop in your tracks. I think we have to remember that even when this book was first published, we were at a time where social media was already taking place, right? So we have these images and perfection in front of us all times. And I wasn't even thinking about social media when I wrote it. But if you think about it, it's a highlight reel. Most people don't show the anguish of the valley, right? When things aren't going well. They show you the peaks and the mountains, right? And so, as we always know, it's what's
If you look at
underneath the
social
water.
media, everybody's got a wonderful life.
Wonderful life. Are you kidding me? I mean, everyone is living the life we all want, right? But the reality
And then
is,
you find out that like 75% of the people are on antidepressants or some crazy thing.
right.
And you go, I see it with my kids, the whole thing. It's just like the phone becomes an addiction, and, it becomes something you're aspiring to, something else that's out there. And that can be an endless rut.
Absolutely. So you have to keep moving, and you have to focus on incremental steps and progress versus that perfection.
Well, another of your promises is to parlay your platform. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. What exactly are you talking about here?
Yeah, well, it's just the idea that we all have a platform, and we constantly look at ourselves as if we haven't achieved anything because we're looking for that perfection, or we're looking for the next thing. You actually have done some things. You've achieved some things. You have experiences. You have progress that you've previously made, and you need to build on that as opposed to discard it.
Okay. James, when you advocate to promote with a purpose, does this have anything to do with bringing one's own personal values into his or her marketing?
Absolutely. And it kind of goes back to that first point about embracing your passion and purpose, right? So when you promote, it's not that just any particular thing or this particular action or this particular item that I want or this particular job. You need to bed everything from purpose, passion out. It changes your conversation. It brings a different emotional value to that conversation and the person you may want to get a job with, a mentor you want to mentor you, etc. And it kind of goes back to the days of apprenticeship, right? We don't use that language as much anymore, right? But if you want to be a great apprentice, you have to really start from what you feel and where your desires are coming from. And so having that as a part of the conversation is key.
Is it kind of like it needs to be like your strategic vision, like in guiding your life?
Well, I don't know if I would call it strategic vision, but I would say because strategic vision can change over time, right? But it's at the center of who you are. Your passion and purpose are a core to who you are. We all have individual fingerprints, and you have a passion and purpose that you were given gifts and talents to fulfill.
Well, all plans have to be put into action. What are some of the ways that we can achieve your fifth promise of putting it all into action?
Yeah, well, there's a couple things. One, really writing down that passion and purpose after you identify it. One of the things that we can do is move quickly, particularly in today's scrolling culture, if you will, right? We move on to the
Oh
next
man,
thing
that's
really
crazy.
quickly. Yeah. So like actually writing it down on a piece of paper. I dare you to write it down or use a Google Doc and put it at the top of the paper, your passion and purpose statement. Number two, then, is setting that vision, like you said. What does it look like if you were to begin to reach it? What does it look like on the outer years, right? And then step back to where you are now and create some goals. And goals, always think about this. I'm on one side of the river. My vision's on the other side of the river. The river is, man, 200 yards. Goals are little bricks across the boulders, rather, that I can skip on to get over to my vision, right? What are your goals? And write down some real goals. And then the last step I would say to you is, now commit to yourself to take an action or two each day to meet those goals.
Yeah, that's such a good way of putting it, because everything's got to kind of build on the step you took before to get you to that final goal. And so many people just get lost in, I don't know, distractions all day instead of focusing on those important things. I don't know. A lot of people like to put it into a movie, that movie, The Martian, where he's got to get back over a 2-year, 3-year period of time and takes a little step each day and does the math. I was just thinking about that when you were talking about getting across the river. But James, we've been able to hit most of the promises in your book. Are there any other points or promises from your book that you would like to talk a little bit about today?
The only other thing I would mention, it's a part of a promise, is creating your passion point incubator. And people, what is a passion point incubator? And it's a way of thinking about how you protect your passion and purpose and the vision for it, right? And so I use the word incubator because most people can relate. When you have tiny eggs and that have not hatched yet, they sit in the incubator. Why? Because it gives them the proper temperature they need and the protection they need to grow. When you've identified your passion and purpose, the easiest thing that can happen is it dies on the vine because others may stomp on it. They don't mean to, but they just may stomp on it and try to call you back to quote unquote reality. What you have to do is surround yourself with people you know, like, and trust that are going to give you great feedback, even give you some criticism, but also give you guidance on your road to achieving your passion and purpose and ultimately your success.
Sometimes I think you need to get a little criticism, constructive criticism.
Absolutely.
That, I found you can't really see the things you're doing stupid, and you need to have somebody, I don't know, give you a heads up on that. I'm doing stupid stuff all day. So, it's important, I think, to get that kind of feedback too.
Absolutely. And that's what I said, people like, and trust that are going to give you advice, criticism, and guidance.
Well, James Rosseau, as we head down the stretch to the finish line today, what is one thing a listener can do tomorrow morning to achieve success on his or her terms? And of course, they should buy your book first. Why don't you put a copy, of your book up to the? Okay, I think we needed to do that earlier.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I found that everyone needs to have their own model for getting things done. Some people like to use the 12-week year and use that. Some people like to use a certain project planning software. I would say the easiest thing you could do is just take a sticky note and each morning write down 2 or 3 things you're committed to do that are going to serve you on your road to success. 2 or 3 things each morning, right? Doesn't have to be 10, not 15, but 2 to 3 things. Decide that early, first thing in the morning, and be committed to it.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of gets back to what you're talking about, taking some action steps every day. And
yeah.
Well, James, this has been a great discussion on your book and your unique entrepreneur success story. Do you have any final points you'd like to share?
No, Richard, thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
Well, James Rosseau, thanks for joining us today on the Home Business Podcast from Delaware.
Yeah, thank you.
To learn more about James Rosseau and his book, Success on Your Own Terms, please visit www.jamesrousseausenior.com. That's James, ROSSEAUSR.com. Did I get that right?
You did.
Okay. Or our podcast website for more information on guests. Thanks for joining us today in this episode of the Home Business Podcast. Share your feedback with us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our website, homebusinessmag.com. So buy the Home Business Startup Guide, subscribe to our newsletter. Please visit homebusinessmag.com or the recently upgraded homebusinessexpo.com. I'm Richard Kevin saying anchors away. We'll talk with you soon. Until then, make it a great home-based success on your own terms day.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Home Business TV.